Hello, students! Welcome! Today we're going to talk about something really interesting, something you might see every day but not have a name for. It's a very important concept for understanding our Indian economy, and it's called disguised unemployment. Now, the name sounds a little complicated, doesn't it? But don't worry. By the end of our lesson today, you'll understand it perfectly. So, let's begin. So, we all learn in social studies that we measure a country's development by its production. It's GVA, right? But I want you to think for a moment. Why is creating jobs just as important? I mean, what's the point of having a lot of production if our people don't have meaningful work? You see, true development isn't just about money or factories. It's about people. People having a good job, an income, and a sense of purpose. Okay, and that brings us to a very interesting puzzle. A real puzzle in India's economy. When we look at where the money comes from versus where the people are working, we find something that, well, it doesn't quite add up. It's a bit strange. Let's investigate this together. All right, look at this chart here. This shows us which sectors of our economy contribute the most to our GVA, our production. See that big blue slice? That's the tertiary sector, or what we call the services sector. It's the biggest contributor. Then we have the secondary sector, which is industry. But look carefully at the smallest slice, the green one. That's the primary sector, which is mostly agriculture. Just keep that in mind. Agriculture is the smallest slice here. Now, let's look at a different picture. This chart shows where people are employed. Where do they actually work? And here is the surprise. Remember how agriculture was the smallest slice in production? Well, look here. It's the biggest slice in employment. So the sector that produces the least amount of value is where most of our people are working. Isn't that strange? That is the puzzle we are talking about. So this brings us to the main question for our lesson today. Why? Why are so many of our people still working in agriculture if that sector is producing such a small part of our country's total GVA? To understand this, to really get to the bottom of it, we have to move away from these big charts and numbers and look at a real-life story. Let's zoom in on a small farm. Yes, to understand this big national puzzle, we are going to look at a small, simple story. It's the story of a farmer named Lakshmi and her family. This will help us see what is actually happening on the ground. So let's meet Lakshmi. She is a small farmer, and she owns a small plot of land. In her family, there are 5 members, and all 5 of them, every single one, works on this small farm. It's the only work they have, so this is what they do all day. Now, let's analyze the situation. All 5 family members are working on the farm, right? But the farm is very small. The work that needs to be done, sowing, weeding, harvesting, it actually only needs 3 people to do it properly. So this means that 2 people are, well, they are extra. And here is the most important part, students, please pay attention. If these 2 extra people were to move and get a job somewhere else, the production from the farm would not decrease one bit. Not at all. The farm would still produce the same amount of grain. So what does this mean? Think about it. Everyone looks like they are working. Nobody is sitting idle, but the reality is that no one is working to their full capacity. The work is just getting divided. This is the key idea here. Everyone is working, but no one is fully employed. Okay, so the problem we just saw on Lakshmi's farm has a special name in economics. Now that you understand the story, it'll be very easy to learn the correct terms. And these terms are very, very important for your exams. The first important term is underemployment. What is it? It's a situation where people are working, yes, but they are working less than their potential. Just like in Lakshmi's family. Each person is capable of doing more work, but because there are too many people on one small farm, they end up doing less than what they could. That is underemployment. And this brings us to our main topic, disguised unemployment. This is a special kind of underemployment. The word disguised means hidden. Why is it hidden? Because it looks like the person is employed. The 2 extra people on Lakshmi's farm, they look busy, right? But their contribution to the production, it's 0, or very, very low. This is disguised unemployment. It's hidden unemployment. Now, you might be thinking that this only happens in villages, on farms, but that's not true. This problem of disguised unemployment is also very common in urban areas, in our cities. Let me give you some examples. Have you seen casual workers, like painters or plumbers, waiting at a labor chalk in the morning? They might wait the whole day and not get any work. Or think of a busy street market. You might see many, many street vendors all selling the same thing, like vegetables or fruits. They are all working hard, but because there are so many of them in one small area, each one earns very little.
They are not working to their full potential. Okay, to make this concept crystal clear, let's compare disguised unemployment with the type of unemployment that we all know, which is called open unemployment. The difference is actually very simple. On one side, we have disguised unemployment. Here, the person appears to have a job, but their contribution is almost nothing. Our example is the 2 extra family members on Lakshmi's farm. On the other side, we have open unemployment. This is what we normally think of as unemployment. Here, a person clearly does not have a job, and they are actively looking for one. For example, an engineer who has just graduated and is searching for a job. So you see, one is hidden and the other is visible, or open.
All right, so now we understand what disguised unemployment is. But the next important question is, why? Why do we have so much of this problem in India, especially in the agricultural sector? Let's look at the main reasons.
Well, a big reason is the heavy pressure of our population on land. There are simply too many people dependent on agriculture. At the same time, the other sectors, the secondary and tertiary sectors, have not created enough jobs. So if there aren't enough jobs in factories or offices, where will people go? They are forced to stay on the farm. So you have more and more family members working on the same small piece of land, which leads to this problem.
This is a very important point to remember, students. It's a common mistake people make. Just because someone is working the whole day from morning to evening, it does not mean they are fully employed. What really matters is their productivity. How much are they contributing to the final output? It is about the value of your work, not just the hours.
Okay, we have learned quite a bit today. So before we finish, let's do a quick recap of everything. This summary will be very useful for you when you are preparing for your exams, especially for writing those 3-mark and 5-mark answers. Now, please look at this table carefully. It summarizes everything. Let's go through it together. First, we have underemployment. That means working less than one's potential. A rural example is a farmer who only finds work during the sowing season. An urban example is a painter who gets work only for a few days a month. Next, our main topic, disguised unemployment. This is when someone seems to be employed but adds very little to production. The rural example is the extra family members on a small farm, and the urban example is many vendors selling the same thing in a small market. And finally, open unemployment, simply having no job and looking for one. A rural example would be a laborer with no work in the off-season, and an urban example is a fresh graduate looking for a job. If you remember this table, you can write a perfect answer.
So now I have a small homework for you, a thinking homework. Now that you know what disguised unemployment is, I want you to look around. Look around in your locality, in the market, maybe when you visit your village. Try to spot examples of it. When you start to see these economic concepts in your real life, that's when you truly understand them. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next class.